Ciao.
This episode of In a Few Minutes is sponsored by BetterHelp, online counseling that's there for you. Join over 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health at BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, betterhelp.com/a-few.
Felt full. So he didn't hurry with his supper. He just poked at it.
Let that stop vibrating. Oh, and if people can't hear it, they think I'm just being dirty. Peter Cohen is there with us, everybody, wrapping the week. Well, he's been wrapping all week, but we're about to end the week with Peter Cohen. I gotta say, I feel like a tiny bit of a dope. Because I made a big deal last week about we're done with dinner party. I didn't make a huge deal about it, but I've been doing dinner party since, I want to say, April or May of this year. Now, I acknowledge this year has been pretty hit or miss as far as whether or not this show is going to be on, but I looked down the list. I thought, well, everybody's done the dinner party, so it's time for me to do dinner party. And so I'll do mine, and that'll be, we'll send that off, into the ether. And then I got Peter Cohen to be on this week and realized he hasn't done a dinner party. So never mind. We're not done. I will let him get a word in, by the way. Peter, will you say one word, please?
One word. No, that's two.
There you go. I bet him I could get you to say more than 2 words. You lose, comrade. Okay. Hey, Yorgi. All right, there we go. So we're doing dinner. Peter Cohen is doing dinner, actually. Anybody who's listened to the show for a while knows the drill. You got a few hours, you got a nice meal, you've got a chance to bring in 3 people. The only thing is they need to be real people. So Frodo does not have a place at the table, although J.R.R. Tolkien could. Paul Atreides does not have a place at the table, although Frank Herbert could. You get the idea. I'm curious, Peter Cohen, who's your first guest?
Harlan Ellison.
Harlan Ellison.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not going to be Ed McMahon all the way through. Tell me why Harlan Ellison.
Well, as a kid especially, picking up just about anything I could, at the used bookshop for sci-fi. Mm-hmm. Finding Ellison's stuff was refreshing because here was an author of this work who refused to get pigeonholed as SF, first of all. He was a speculative fiction writer. He was never an SF writer. But, just a very forceful, commanding personality sort of instructed his writing. And that made me want to find out a lot more about him. I actually, when I was out in L.A., much younger, many years ago, I met him at a bookshop out there and had a nice conversation. So I would love to bring him back from the great beyond and have an expanded dinner with him. I think it would be a hoot.
Is there any particular anything you'd want to talk about? I mean, a particular work, do you have particular questions, or is it just you want to spend more time with the man?
Oh God! Well, I know incidentally from the countless experiences that I've read online and from my own brief experience that one day that I would just basically have to say 3 words to him and he could sort of fill in the blanks.
It's funny. I have one Harlan Ellison story. With the one time that John Champion and I, when we were on Mission Log, we were doing Mission Log, the one time that we were in the big room, because there are 3 different stages for the Star Trek convention in Las Vegas. And the one time that we were supposed to be in the giant room, before us was Walter Koenig and Harlan Ellison. So we were late. That's the one thing. But I did have the joy, though, of as soon as John and I sat down to start talking, just seeing people file out because, Walter and Harlan were off the stage. Who's your next guest, sir?
Well, another literary, I guess, hero, anti-hero, whatever, Hunter S. Thompson.
Interesting. You were the second person to choose Hunter S. Thompson.
There we go.
Tell me why.
Well, I think he's the patron saint of all misanthrope journalists everywhere.
Okay.
Gonzo journalism, him, Tom Wolfe, et cetera, it sort of rattled things up. And again, as a young writer and as a young reader, I read Hunter S. Thompson at a very formative time, and his complete rejection of status quo appealed very much to my anti-establishment sensibilities, and it has probably informed me way too much to this day.
I will confess, and I had to say the same thing to Chuck Joyner, because Chuck was the other person who picked Hunter S. Thompson. And I had to confess to Chuck, as I will to you, I've not really read Hunter S. Thompson. I'm familiar, but I haven't read any of his work. I'm curious, is it too late? Like, I also never read Catcher in the Rye, and I feel like it's probably too late for me and Catcher in the Rye. Is it too late? And if it's not too late on Hunter S. Thompson, where would you suggest I go?
Oh, God, there's so many different directions. But, I mean, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is sort of, that was, that was the thing that, for me, where I just kind of stepped through the looking glass at that point. And got very pulled into this world that he created and this sort of this perspective. But there's a lot of other good stuff too. But it's funny. I think that it hits you differently as an adult than it does as a kid. Like I felt that way watching Dune. Wow, there's a lot of this story that hasn't aged well or really doesn't translate, to 2021, that, was cool in 1984 when I saw David Lynch do this. Or, maybe parts of this are just unfilmable as well, right? It doesn't always translate. It can be difficult sometimes, but Hunter S. Thompson was, at that point in my life, such a great influence. I would love to spend time with him having dinner, but I think he would probably party a little bit too hard, even for me to kind of keep up with. So I don't think I could match him shot for shot.
More with Peter in a moment, but first a word from today's sponsor, BetterHelp. What is getting in the way of your happiness? If your answer is nothing, good for you. If you had any other answer, help is out there. BetterHelp. Here's how it works. You go to their app or site, you answer a few questions, and BetterHelp goes to work finding the right licensed professional therapist for you. Then you work with them on stress, anxiety, grief, self-esteem, whatever's holding you back. And you do it in a way that's most comfortable for you. My last counselor and I used a combination of phone calls and text messages, all of it safe and secure inside the BetterHelp app. If you're hoping your problems are just going to go away on their own, they're probably not gonna. But help is out there. BetterHelp. As a listener, you'll get 10% off your first month by visiting our sponsor at betterhelp.com/afew. That's HELP. betterhelp.com/afew. As in a few minutes. Join over 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health. Again, that is BetterHelp, HELP, betterhelp.com/afew. And thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring today's show. Finishing up our dinner party with Peter Cohen, I will remind people one more time where they can follow Peter's work. RCR Wireless.com. He is writing for them now, and of course you can follow him on Twitter. Flarg, Flargh @Flarg, or twitter.com/Flarg. It's interesting. You and I talked about Dune. Golly, you and I talked about Dune in the spring, and then you and I talked about it off mic the last time you were on after the Apple Unleashed event. I still haven't been, and I've got HBO Max, but I haven't watched it either because it's sort of what I was talking about earlier in the week about the Velvet Underground thing. I want to see that on as big a screen as I can possibly see it when I see it, but I'm also finding that I love the book so much. And there was just so much stuff of like, people talking about it and how amazing it was. And I'm kind of like, do I actually want to see it? And I don't think it's going to be a bad movie, but can it measure up to, what's in my head? And then also the fact that they're just going to leave us halfway through it is kind of a bummer too.
I think the most charitable thing that I can say about Dune is that it's a very good pilot for a TV series.
I remember I don't know if you said that on mic or off last time, but I remember you saying that, and it made me both happy and sad. Who's your third guest, sir?
Maximilien Robespierre.
Okay. You're going to have to help me out a lot.
Well, I mean, Robespierre was obsessed with the idea of or the concept of an ideal French Republic. Mm-hmm. And he was probably best known for the Committee of Public Safety, which led to the Reign of Terror, in which, lots of people in France lost their lives at the hands of Madame Guillotine. I am very interested, just in general, in the revolutionaries who sort of sit at these moments of intense social change and end up drenched in blood, because the various biographies and things that I've read and stuff that I've watched over the years always paints them as, it's easy to dismiss these people as monsters or, evil creations that are, ghoulish or somehow superhuman in their, distorted thinking, these characters from history. But they're often much more complicated than that. So I think the three of them would make a fascinating dinner party. Robespierre, Hunter S. Thompson, and Harlan Ellison. I'm not sure anybody would get out of that dinner party alive, but I'm sure that we would be very entertained and have a lot to think about before we were all dead.